Hello. Thank you so much for watching the recording. This is of the presentation that I gave for DBSA California on December 17th. Unfortunately, we forgot to record that session, so I'm doing this as sort of a one-off thing for people who may not have been able to attend but were interested in the topic. So with that said, this particular workshop is part of a series that we are doing all about career navigation, specifically targeted to people with mood disorders. This particular session is all about writing resumes and cover letters. And my perspective from this is coming from lived experience as somebody with a mood disorder, as well as experience as a career advisor and learning about career navigation in general. So, with that said, um, let's see. Right. So obviously, if you're watching the recording, you don't have to worry about these kind of housekeeping items. But if you choose to join us for the next session, which will be on January 7th, and there'll be announcements going out about that, um, just be aware of these kinds of things when we get into that. So the lineup for our presentation today, we'll start with dealing with job application anxiety. We'll move into resume tips. Then we'll talk about specifically considerations for having career gaps or transitions, because that can be quite common for people with mood disorders. We'll then go on to cover letter tips, and then we'll wrap up with some next steps and resources. But before we get into that, a little bit about myself. My name is Caroline. I am a career advisor, and I also live with cyclothymia and OCD. And again, my perspective comes from working in multiple industries, being a career advisor during my work, and also a person who lives with a mood disorder. So just to know that that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from with all of this information. I want to start off by saying job applications are stressful. It's a very annoying process, and you are absolutely valid in feeling any kind of feelings of frustration about the whole process. You are not alone, and it is very real, that anxiety regarding applying to jobs specifically. So with that said, I put together a few tips for keeping in mind when you're applying to jobs to manage your feelings while still being able to stay productive. So what I'll say here is it's important to address your health first. If you are actively having a mood episode, whether it's on the manic spectrum or the depressive spectrum, take your steps to get well first. You don't need to add the stress of a job search on top of that. And I know sometimes it can be stressful because it's like, well, I need to have money coming in, but it's more important that you take care of your health and get back into a stable mood state first before you start taking steps to apply to jobs. So if you're in a depressive state or a manic state, make sure to work with your care provider and do any kinds of self-care activities that are helpful for you, whether that's exercising, getting your diet back on track, all of that sort of stuff. Make sure you're taking care of that first before you even get into job anxiety. Um, but assuming that's you're in a good stable spot in terms of your mood disorder. Um, the next thing is to recognize imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is very, very sneaky. Employers, and I can tell you this as somebody who's hired people, they are not expecting you to have every single qualification on their job description. Obviously, that's fantastic if everybody has all of those skills. If you have every single one, that's awesome. But that's not an expectation that they have. They want somebody who can fit all of the positions that are, all of the necessary parts of the job position. But they also put down nice to haves. So even if you don't fit every single criteria, apply for that job anyway if you're interested in it. But I know for sure imposter syndrome can sneak in and say, oh, well, I'm not qualified for this job. I don't have everything they're looking for, so I'm not even going to bother. Check that voice when you hear it and decide whether you're really interested in the job and give it a shot. The worst that can happen is you just don't hear back. So just recognize imposter syndrome is very sneaky and tries to get in there sometimes. to expand on handling writing anxiety specifically, since we're focusing on resumes and cover letters here. One thing is to set very specific small goals. So sometimes it can seem daunting to come up with a whole resume, a whole cover letter. Even if it's one page, maybe two if it's a resume, and we'll get into that more. But it can add up to a lot of points you're trying to make, and it can be overwhelming. So I recommend breaking it down into smaller pieces. So, for example, for a resume, maybe you're just working on like the skills section for a block of time, and then take a break and go do something else. Or for the cover letter, you just want to talk about why you're interested in the company. You're not even getting into like these are the qualifications I bring. Just do a little bit at a time. Don't feel like you have to sit down and write the whole document all at once. So that's one way that you can sort of take it bit by bit. The next one is putting in placeholders. If you're stuck on a specific part of your resume or cover letter, put in a placeholder phrase and move on to another section for now. One of my peers in my local DBSA chapter taught me about uh, the journalists will put in TK, which means to come, but they would put a K because it was easier to pick out rather than a C, which might blend in with more words. You put that in for a section that you're not ready to write yet, but at least you can move on to other parts of it. So if you're specifically stuck with one thing, just know you can put in a placeholder and work on what you feel comfortable to work on until then. AI can definitely help, but I would encourage you to be responsible with it. And by that I mean, you can use AI to help you get going, and to phrase things. Sometimes it can be very helpful in that way. However, you should still edit it and phrase things, and change phrases to fit your voice. Um, in addition to having it generated. Because what I've noticed from testing out a bunch of different AI systems, when I'll say generate a cover letter based on this job description, a lot of times the descriptions are very similar to each other. So you can almost tell which specific AI system you're using. Like Google Gemini uses a particular phrasing, ChatGPT uses one. So if you're just cut and pasting that and not checking it first, chances are the recruiter's going to be able to tell just because they might have gotten other cover letters that were written with AI. So just be aware of that. It can definitely help, but make sure it sounds like you're writing too. And also know that you can get more assistance. If you are getting too stressed out about building resumes or you don't know where to start, there's many places that you can go to for help. You can find, if you happen to be in college or in school now, there is an entire department that will help you, the Career Services department on your campus. They're there to help you write your cover letter and resume. So they'll work with you for sure. Libraries sometimes have workshops, so you can check your local library for that. And there are professional resume writers who that is their job, and they will help you with that. I just sort of to check it out. I've seen them on Fiverr for very reasonable prices. So if you find you're just getting way too stressed out doing all of the steps that I'm going to go through, just know that you're not alone, and you can absolutely get more help for all of these. But with that said, um, we'll get into actually building a resume. So once you create one, it's not quite done. You do need to customize them for each individual position you're applying for, but it is much easier once you have, your template for your resume and your cover letter, because then it's just a matter of adjusting phrasing and highlighting one experience versus another. So once you kind of have your baseline one, it's a lot easier from there, even though you would be customizing them. So this workshop will kind of teach you how to create your baseline one so that it makes it easier for you to apply to positions after that. Resumes are a 1 to 2 page snapshot of your experience. Most common are the 1 page ones, but if you have a significant amount of experience, you can go on to 2 pages as long as it's relevant. A different snapshot should be used for every type of job that you want to apply for. So if you're applying to a bunch of jobs with a for-profit. You might have a different resume than if you were applying to jobs at a nonprofit or a university or, a school or something like that. So making them customized depending on what you're applying to, what type of job function, what type of industry, that's where you'll have to customize it. But in general, it's going to be a 1 to 2 page snapshot of your experience. Breaking it down to the individual sections, I highly recommend using an objective statement at the very top. This is a very abridged version of your story and your interest in the position. So you're just summarizing who you are and why you're interested in this specific position in 1 to 2 sentences. It sounds simple, but it's not. Boiling everything down to 1 or 2 sentences can be very challenging. So with that said, you know, this is an example of one that I had in the template resume that I created for this session. And if you're interested in the resources, we did have a packet we gave out. Feel free to contact DVSA California, who's organizing this series, and I can send that on to you. But feel free to reach out to them if you are interested in those resources. Um, this is one that sort of talks about motivation. This is a motivated and results-driven business school graduate. They're looking for this specific type of position, offer a strong foundation and skills that they're bringing into it, proven ability to do XYZ. So this person would use this if they were looking for those two specific types of positions that they specifically name. So business analyst or project manager. So you would create an objective statement for whatever position you're applying for, and you'd want it to be pretty customized to that. We did an activity in our live version, so I encourage you to take a look at this exercise, and I'll walk through it, and then pause the tape. Feel free to do this, and then come back. But to practice it, try writing 1 to 2 sentences that summarize who you are and your experience. What kind of position do you want? What skills do you have that can relate to the position you want? And what experiences do you have that can relate to that specific job? You can pull up a job description for a job that you're actually interested in applying to, or think of a position that you're interested in general. And then from there, that can kind of guide your objective statement. So feel free to pause. I will continue talking, but I'd be curious to see what you might come up with here. Going on to the next section of the resume are the skills section. So skills are the tools that you can use in the job. Everyone has developed both hard and soft skills that can help you. So with that said, I've created some of the broader ones. It's not an exhaustive list, but an idea of what hard skills and soft skills you might be able to highlight on your resume are going to follow in the next couple slides. So hard skills are technical and specific, and they often require some sort of training. A few examples, and again, this is not exhaustive. There are definitely other examples of these. Languages. So fluency in reading, writing, speaking, understanding, highly valued in any industry. And in some cases are a requirement. For example, if you wanted to be a translator, you definitely would need to know the language that you're going to be translating to and from. So languages definitely count as one of those. Software is another big one too. Individual positions may require you to know specific software. So if you have experience with any that are listed in the job description, make sure to add those to your resume because they might be looking for those keywords. Design is a hard skill. A design ability is valuable in any industry. This can include artistic knowledge as well as web design, UX, social media, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a hard skill because you need to create that sort of thing with a knowledge of technology. And then writing is another big one. Writing skills can lend themselves to the job that you're applying for. They can be quite specific. For example, grant writing, you're writing a particular script, blog posts, technical documents. So that's definitely an example of a hard skill that translates across multiple industries. Soft skills are character traits that help at work. These are interpersonal skills or personal attributes that can make you work well with others. They're often just as, if not more important than hard skills. So don't worry too much if you have, you're feeling like you don't have any hard skills. That first off, I guarantee you do. But soft skills are often really important, even crucially important to particular jobs. With that said, one great way to look at soft skills is the NACE core competencies. This is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They're sort of an alliance of universities as well as employers who establish these are the skills that we're looking for with people who are graduating from school. So some of these, there is a little bit of an overlap between hard and soft, but these are the core competencies that they point out. Critical thinking, communication, equity and inclusion, leadership, general professionalism, technology, teamwork, and self-development. And that primarily means just an interest in wanting to develop yourself and wanting to learn new skills. So this just gives you a sense of some different soft skills and how you can express that on your resume. But these are like the top skills that employers across this organization said that are very important to the jobs they are hiring for. Another activity, um, feel free to pause the video and think about your skills and write down 1 to 2 for each. Your skills do not have to be work related. In fact, sometimes it's useful to think of things, oh, I have this soft skill of, whatever it is, and see how you can apply that to something different. So, pause the tape, write down 1 to 2 hard skills you have and 1 to 2 soft skills you have. And then you'll get more of a sense of things you can put on your resume then. All right. The main meat and potatoes of your resume is going to be your work experience. So there's a couple of different approaches you can take to writing this part. First off, your job experiences are active. So the key to writing your job experiences is to ensure that they are written in the active tense. This conveys leadership and confidence. And it can be kind of tricky sometimes to write it just right. So using an active tense verb for a resume, here are a few examples of how to do this. For example, instead of the project was completed by me, phrase it as I completed the project. First off, it's just a little bit more direct. It's easier to sort of parse what you did, but also it implies more confidence too. Again, instead of responsible for the department's newsletter, created and managed department's newsletter. That shows more of an active role. Instead of recognized as employee of the month, earned employee of the month due to excellence in XYZ. Like specifically, what does that encompass when you're voted employee of the month? Is that good customer service? Is that, good time management? Explain a little bit more about that, and that'll bring in those skills too that you have. And then instead of a 20% increase in sales were achieved 20% increase in sales. That's also just a little bit clearer too. So those are some examples of how you can rephrase it to the active tense. The activity here, feel free to pause the video again. I did provide a list of active verbs for resumes. If you are interested in those resources, feel free to reach out to DBSA California, and we can hook you up with those. But if you just Google active verbs for resumes, a list of a ton of different verbs will come up. Take one of the ones that resonates with you and write some of your own job experiences using the active verb in the list as the first part of the bullet point. So for example, managed, you want to use the word managed. It could be like managed live feed of the video or something. I don't know. You use the verb as the first one and then you go into it. And then, that might help you to phrase things on your resume. So feel free to pause the video and do that. A few more tips for resumes. The education section, Put the school, degree level, and major. You do not have to put in the years unless you're currently trying to complete the program. So if you're currently in the program, tell them your graduation uh, year. That way they know, when you're about to graduate. But if you would prefer not to leave the years on there, you don't have to include them. And that has become a more recent trend with age discrimination. So just know that you do not have to put the years in if you don't want to. The only time it is sort of like you should put the year in is if you're currently uh, completing that education. GPA is never required, so don't worry about that. If you have a doctoral degree, I do recommend including that and listing what your dissertation topic was. And, even if you're transitioning out of academia, you're going to be doing something totally different. You worked really hard on that if you achieved a doctorate. It is not easy. So highlight that. Those skills that you needed to apply to do that dissertation. There are skills that go into writing that dissertation that will apply to any industry. So don't have any qualms over it if your dissertation was a different topic than what you're applying for. Make sure to own that. um, Extracurricular activities. This could be literal in terms of maybe you're part of a school club, or it can be types of volunteer work you do. Make sure to put the years of participation if you've done it for multiple years. And just so you know, DBSA absolutely counts. Particularly facilitating is a really great skill to highlight. Creating subsections for jobs. If you have experience in a different industry or you're transitioning to a different job, what you can do to highlight that you have relevant skills is to create a section for jobs directly relevant to a position and another one that says other experience. So, for example, um, sales related experience, you can create a little section. But if you have experience doing something else, if you were in marketing before, you can put that marketing information in, but it's highlighting the sales part. This also works if you did it at a previous job, but then you started doing something else, but then you want to go back to it. So if it's not chronological, this is a way to highlight it and sort of it can sometimes make it easier to talk about a career gap. So that's one way I would recommend approaching that. And awards and honors, if you have them, put them in. If you have any academic, athletic, military, or community awards and honors, that's always a nice thing to include. A word on career gaps and transitions. I see this particularly with people with mood disorders. They tend to be concerned about how they would approach that. I will start this off by saying your story is one that you control and you disclose as you feel comfortable. You are not obligated to share that information with anyone if you don't want to. In fact, you are legally protected in the United States at least. So just know that going into this, you get to tell them as much or as much or as little as you want to. But here's some general advice regarding addressing these within a job application. Keep it simple. The main goal of your application is to express interest in a position at this point in time. Stay on topic, and with everything that you're applying to this position with, make sure to bring it back to this is why I'm applying to this right now. So the objective statement helps with that. I'm applying to this because this. The cover letter will do even more of that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then when you're on the interview, that'll be another theme that'll come up. So just practice saying, I want to apply to this job right now because. So that's the main objective for your resume, your cover letter, and it will be for your interview. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Explain your logic. So with career transitions, employers will likely want to know what sparked the transition. So explaining why you want to shift in your cover letter, which we'll talk about later, is helpful there. You can also address it a little bit in your objective statement, just saying like, I want to use these skills in a different way. So they might just need to understand your logic a little bit. So that's one way to approach that. Stay in the now. With career gaps, you don't need to mention anything about the gap if you don't want to. If you do want to mention it, you can frame it as leading you to wanting to pursue this job now. So, and this again, you can get into a little bit on the interview too. So, for example, you had to take some time off because you had a sick family member or you were sick yourself. Um, you can address that quickly in the cover letter and say, like, I had to take some time off for health, medical reasons. You do not need to get into your diagnosis or anything related to that. Medical condition is fine. Um, and while I had to take time off for that, I got interested in XYZ or I built skills in XYZ. I found that that made me interested in this particular type of work or this company. And that's what led me to apply now. So again, staying back to this is why I'm applying to this job right now, and reframing it that way is very useful with your applications. And again, they can only ask so much. So anything related to a medical condition is protected under ADA in the US anyway. Know that you do not need to talk about it if you don't want to. And in fact, on the resume cover letter, you don't have to mention it at all. There will be a presentation on the 7th about interviewing, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about how to approach those types of questions. But certainly for the resume and cover letter, you don't have to address it at all if you don't want to. A bit of detail on the cover letters. They're actually a little bit more straightforward than the resume. So the nice thing with this one is that you can kind of go based on a template and you can pretty much adjust it very quickly for all the other ones. So your resume shows your experience. The cover letter gives more information on who you are and why you're interested in working with them now. So it's a little bit more storytelling. With that said, your goal, again, is to tell them why now. What drew you to this job and why now? Once you know the answers to these questions, that will guide your cover letter, and your entire branding of yourself within this process. This is a sample 4 paragraph template for a cover letter. Certainly, a cover letter should just be 1 page. And then you just kind of fill out with this kind of information to express to the employer your interest and why you think you might be a good fit. So the first paragraph should say what literal job you're applying to. Um, a lot of times employers are hiring for multiple positions at the same time, so make sure it's clear, like I'm applying for this particular position because they might have hundreds of jobs they're accepting applications for. So that makes sure it goes into the right folder. And let them know where you found it. And if it happens to be like you talked to somebody who worked at the company, that's a good thing to mention there too. So it's like, Joe Smith told me about this position. I'm very interested in it. So that's all you need to do in the first paragraph is just, I'm interested in this job. Here's how I found it. The second paragraph should answer the question, why do you want to work at this organization or do this job? So that will take a little bit more storytelling, finessing, but think about, what interests you about this particular job? What prompted you to want to apply to it? And express that within 3 to 5 sentences. So that should be the focus of your second paragraph. Your third paragraph briefly summarizes your experience and how you think it relates to the job. What you talk about here can be on your resume, but it doesn't have to. Perhaps you have some sort of personal connection with the brand, or there's some sort of thing that maybe isn't based on your resume or some specific job thing you did at a particular position in the past, but it's definitely relevant. You can put that in instead. But if it is something on your resume, that's fine too. You're just expressing, like, I think I could bring these skills that would be useful in this position. The fourth paragraph is just wrapping it up, providing your contact information, and thanking them for their time and consideration. So this is a place to say, I've included my resume, any kind of samples. If you need anything, reach out to me here. I hope to hear from you soon. So this is a template for cover letters that I've seen has worked pretty well. So the main ones that you will need to adjust, obviously the name of the company and where you found it in the first paragraph. The second and the third ones are really the ones that you'll have to adjust. But the fourth paragraph for sure, you can just use the same one. And just to wrap up here, resumes and cover letters are tools to help you. Having an overview of your story helps employers to see your unique value. So remember, they're just tools in telling your story. And the more that you know why you want to apply to a specific job right now and convey that through your resume and cover letter, that will help the employers to get a sense of who you are, why you're a good fit, and what you're passionate about. So with that said, a few resources I'd like to highlight here. If you are interested in receiving the worksheets that we had in this presentation when we gave it live, feel free to reach out to DBSA California, and then we can hook you up with that. This recording obviously will go out before the next one, and the newsletter typically adds the other recordings as well. So just know that you can get recordings of all of the different presentations beyond just this one. Um, there are tons of great resume and cover letter templates for free on Canva. So feel free to check that out. The NACE core competencies can help you outline those skills and communicate experience. That's the list of the soft skills I had mentioned. A really great AI-based tool that I've found is JobScan, which you put your resume in and it helps you to phrase things so that they're optimized for applicant tracking systems, which are usually very keyword based. So I did put the link there. And Monster has a really good sampling of sample resumes for multiple different industries because they can look different. That's the link is there in the presentation as well. These are my references that I used throughout this presentation, so giving credit to those sources. Thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you at a coming presentation with DBSA California. But in the meantime, I wish you a happy new year, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.